Panasonic 12-35 2.8 Mark 1. I've had this a long time. Let me tell you a few things about it. So this lens isn't anything new. Why am I talking about it now? Well, it's time to change. I've had this lens for nearly 3 years and it's been my workhorse for everything. Commercial videography, wedding videography, on tripod, on gimbal, doesn't matter. This has pretty much been attached, especially since I got my GH5. It's been the lens I use at all times. Been a fantastic lens. Unfortunately, myself at the start of the year dropped this camera and lens combo and it caused a little scuff on the glass. Now it doesn't affect you, so I carried on using it this year, and even though I was a little bit worried at the start, I thought, oh, it might affect some of the optics. It wasn't a massive heavy fall. It landed on chippings, like a pile of chippings, and it wasn't a massive amount of damage. But then further on into the summer this year, my colleague Chris, who does wedding videography for me, decided to drop the combo as well, and he actually cracked the thread and the lens around there. Yes, I'm calling you out, Chris, and I know you're watching. This just means I can't use ND filters anymore, and I was not always using ND filters, but at certain points when it needed it, especially in the high sort of summer months, you do kind of need one, and it does help to have one. And that just means that I cannot use one. And that's really what this video is about. It's my thoughts after 3 years. This really is a long-term review of this lens. 3 years I've used this, mainly for weddings, and I'm going to just show you some wedding clips and what I've managed to do with it. It's a tremendous lens. The picture quality you get, the sharpness you get, the bokeh you can get, even on such a small crop sensor as a GH5. When you zoom in, you can still use it on a gimbal with no issues. The barrel extension isn't a big deal, and it just makes it such a versatile lens. It really is the go-to lens. It's equivalent of 24-70 on a full frame, but I imagine if you're watching this, you may be considering getting a 12-35 for your crop sensor camera. Now, not too long ago, Panasonic released a Mark II version of this. Now, the only real difference in the real world that I have seen with those lenses is the fact that the Mark II has dual image stabilization. So this has image stabilization, as does the GH5, and together they work wonderful. It's just a superb setup. I have used a Mark II. A friend of the show, John Ashley, had one for a while before he went over to Sony, and it was lovely. It was a lovely lens and it worked great. But I didn't see a better image quality out of it. Now, the Mark II was meant to have a few other differences, like rounded edges on the blades, weather resistant, things like that, but nothing more than what you get with this. Not really. I put them side by side. John shot a wedding for me and I was able to see the footage directly out of it. It was lovely, but it wasn't any better. Now, you can actually still get this lens, but it's very hard to find any new copies of this lens. They were selling for around £700, about $800 in the US, and that's what the price you'll pay now for the new Mark II. So when you can get this used for about £350 or about $400 in the US, compared to $800 for the new one, or £700 in the UK for the new Mark II, you've got to ask yourself, is it really worth it? I don't think it is. Now, this has been used zooming in and out a lot, and when I mean a lot, I mean at least 50 weddings a year, at least 30-40 commercial jobs a year. At a wedding, I'm zooming in and out all the time. Even when on gimbal, it is being constantly used, and it's still as smooth as the day I bought it. Focus ring, I don't really do any manual focusing, so I can't comment on that. With the GH5, the autofocus is okay, not quite as good as Sony, but it's still really good. It can do a good job, and that's all that really matters. But the image quality that you get, as you can see up on screen now, is wonderful. I do love this lens, and I am going to be very sad to see it go. It still does a job, so I may not sell it on. Obviously, I can't hide the fact that there is a chip taken out of the thread there, and there's a couple of little marks on the glass, but it doesn't actually affect use. But from a professional point of view, I need to really think about changing it. I don't want it to develop a fault as I'm midway through a shoot and not have any other backup. That would be a nightmare. The good thing with the optical image stabilization is you can actually turn it on and off manually with an actual switch, which is a nice touch. Thread on there, as you can see, it's all metal connection, which is just another nice thing with these lovely Lumix lenses. They are really well built. Considering I've dropped this twice, it's actually done really well. For those that haven't seen, I'll quickly pop this on the camera body so you can have a look what it's like together. For reference, I may do another review on this one. This is the Sigma Art 60mm 2.8. I managed to pick that up for about £80, about $100 here in the UK used. It's very limiting, but when you're at the back of a church or you're at a distance during speeches and you need that extra throw and you don't want to put on a cheap f4, f5, whatever zoom option you might have, for the cost, the image quality of that is on par with this, and it's actually part of the Sigma Art range. £80 for a Sigma Art lens. People don't even know these things exist. And there you have it. As you can see on the body there, it fits it perfectly. It's designed really well. It's designed with the GH camera range in mind. So the GH4 was obviously what came before, and I think this was designed around the time they had the GH3, but I'm not 100% on that. But it fits it lovely. The contours, it feels right. The weight, it's not front heavy, not back heavy, even when you zoom in. It's a lovely setup, and this handheld is such a good setup with the stabilization of the sensor in the GH5, and obviously with the power stabilization on the lens. It's brilliant. So if you're thinking about buying this lens, think no more, just get it. One of my colleagues here, Ben, has actually got the 12-60, so he bought the GH5 with the 12-60. The 12-60 is a 2.8 to f4, so obviously as you zoom in, the iris shuts down a little bit, and that's a little bit annoying. It's got a great range and throw on there, obviously, being that it's nearly double the length of the 35, but when you get to a certain point with your work, you need it to be 2.8 all the way through, and that's really frustrating. If they made the 12-60 2.8 all the way through, I would pick one up 100%, even if the size of it was much bigger, and I'm surprised they didn't do it, or maybe they couldn't do it, and that's fine, but it would have been an amazing lens to have if they did that. When he compared my work with the same camera but this lens to his, even at 12 to 35 range, which he uses most of the time, he was blown away. He couldn't understand why the image quality was better. The image you get out of this just seems to be rendered nicer. It's such a lovely lens, and I highly recommend it to anyone. The 12-60 is a more expensive lens anyway, and when I told him about this, he sold his 12-60, got the 12-35, and off he went, and he's been happy ever since. So I'll pop a link in the description to the Mark II, which you can consider if you think that dual image stabilization, because you're doing a lot of handheld work, is important to you, then it's worth considering. But if you can find a bargain anywhere on eBay, Gumtree, Craigslist, that you can get a good reliable deal for £300 to £400 or dollars, snap it up. Just come and get it. So yeah, there we have it. My unsponsored, unbiased view of the 12 to 35. It's wonderful. Thanks again for watching. I hope you're enjoying these videos. We're going to be exploring more on the videography side of things, and I can't wait to show you what we got coming up in the next 3 months. Weddings for me start to quieten down a little bit, and we've got some really cool things lined up for the channel, so do stay tuned for that. Hit the like button, subscribe, also hit that notification icon so you're kept informed of when our next videos are coming out. As always, I'm Matt from Roto, and I will see you in the next one. Oh, one thing I didn't say. What am I going to buy next? Another one of these.